Imagine being 13 years old, you're home with your friends. You think you're completely safe. The doors are locked. The lights are on. And then, you look up at an upstairs window. And realize, someone is watching you. It happened during the summer of 2011. A 13-year-old boy was spending the day at home with a few friends. It was supposed to be an ordinary afternoon. The kind of day where nothing interesting happens. Until one of them noticed something strange. Someone was standing upstairs. Behind a window. Watching them. At first, they thought it was someone they knew, maybe a neighbor. Maybe a family member. But then they realized something terrifying. Nobody else was supposed to be in the house. The boy stared at the window. The figure didn't move. Didn't wave. Didn't leave. Just stood there. Watching. The kid started getting nervous. And then came the question that nobody wanted to ask, how did that person get inside? They hadn't heard a door open. They hadn't heard footsteps. Nothing. The house had been quiet the entire time. But someone was upstairs. The boy gathered his courage. Slowly, he started moving through the house. Every step felt louder than the last. The hallway was empty. The living room was empty. The kitchen was empty. Then he reached the stairs. And stopped. Because suddenly, he wasn't sure he wanted to go upstairs. What if the person was still there? What if they were hiding? What if they had been watching the children, for much longer than anyone realized? The boy finally went upstairs. He checked the rooms. Nothing. No one. For a moment, he thought maybe they had imagined it. Maybe the figure had disappeared. But then, he noticed something. A door. It wasn't closed properly, it was slightly open. And something about it felt wrong. He pushed it. Slowly. The door opened. And there, hidden inside the house, was a stranger. The man looked disheveled. Unstable. And completely out of place. He wasn't supposed to be there. He had no reason to be inside that house. And suddenly, everything made sense. The children weren't imagining things. The stranger had been inside. And they had no idea how long he had been there. The police were called immediately. When officers arrived, they discovered the man had entered through an unlocked door. Then he had moved through the house. Searching. Rummaging through the family's belongings. While the children were nearby. The entire time, they had been living their normal afternoon. Laughing. Talking. Thinking they were safe. But someone had already entered their home. Someone they didn't know. Someone who had no reason to be there. The most disturbing part. The stranger wasn't caught because someone heard him. He wasn't caught because an alarm went off. He wasn't caught because a neighbor called the police. He was discovered because a 13-year-old boy looked up at a window. One glance. That's all it took. Because if he had looked away, if he had ignored what he saw, the stranger might have remained hidden. And the children might never have known that someone had been inside their home, watching them. The police eventually arrested the intruder. And the children were safe. But that day left behind a terrifying question. One that still haunts anyone who hears this story. How long had the man been inside the house before they noticed him? Because sometimes, the most frightening danger, isn't the person trying to break into your home. It's the person, who is already inside. The first thing the dog noticed, wasn't the stranger. It was something moving between the trees. Something the dog could see, but the person holding the leash couldn't. And by the time they realized someone was watching the house, it was already too late. It happened in a quiet rural area. The kind of place where houses were separated by long stretches of forest. No traffic. No neighbors nearby. Just trees, dark roads, and silence. The narrator had agreed to house-sit for their brother. It seemed like an easy job. Stay at the house. Take care of the dog. Lock the doors. And enjoy a few quiet days alone. But the house had one problem. It sat directly beside a huge stretch of woods. And those woods were much closer than they looked. The dog was named Bear. Normally, Bear loved going outside. He would run ahead. Smell everything. Chase animals. But one afternoon, something changed. They were walking along a trail behind the house when Bear suddenly stopped. His entire body became tense. He stared into the trees. The narrator called his name. Bear. Nothing. The dog wouldn't move. Then, he started growling. Not at an animal. Not at a sound. At something standing somewhere inside the woods. The narrator looked carefully. Nothing. Just trees. So they pulled Bear back toward the house. But Bear kept looking behind them. As if, whatever he had seen, was following. A few minutes later, they reached the house. That's when someone knocked on the front door. The narrator wasn't expecting anyone. They opened it carefully. A stranger was standing outside. A complete stranger. The man looked around the property. Then asked for someone. But there was a problem. That person didn't live there. The narrator told him that. The stranger didn't seem surprised. He simply stared for a moment, then walked away. No explanation. No apology. Nothing. And somehow, that was more frightening than if he had threatened them. That night, the narrator couldn't sleep. The house felt different. Every little noise seemed louder. A branch hitting the window. The floor creaking. The wind moving through the trees. Then, Bear started barking. The narrator sat up. The dog was standing near the window. Staring outside. Again. The narrator slowly walked over. And looked through the glass. At first, nothing. Then they saw it. A person, running. Along the edge of the woods. The figure disappeared behind the trees. The narrator froze. Because the person wasn't running away from the house. They were running, toward it. The narrator rushed to the window in another room. Nothing. Then another. Nothing. The stranger was gone. Whoever had been running through the trees, was gone. And the person who had tried the back door, was gone too. But the narrator knew one thing. They hadn't imagined it. Because Bear had seen them too. The narrator left the house that same day. They never stayed there alone again. But the strangest part came later. After the incident, the family checked the property more carefully. And they discovered something disturbing. There were signs that someone had been spending time near the house. Hidden deep in the woods. Far enough away that no one inside could easily see them. Close enough, to watch the house. To watch the windows. To watch anyone who came and went. And suddenly, that stranger's question made sense. He wasn't lost. He wasn't looking for someone. He was checking, who was inside. But there's one question that still has no answer. Who was the person running through the woods? Was it the same person who came to the front door? Was someone actually trying to get inside? Or had someone been watching that house, long before the narrator ever arrived? Because sometimes, the most terrifying thing about being alone, is realizing, you were never actually alone.